Finally, it's time for our journey to come to an end. In 3 to 4 videos time, because I can't fit the sheer obesity of Elden Ring into a single one. That's right, I'm skipping Sekiro. I don't like it because I suck at it, and I don't enjoy myself remotely enough to commit to getting good. So we're going right into open world Dark Souls and doing our usual thing for it. All areas, all bosses, all rated by aesthetics, mechanics, annoyance, and excitement. Obviously, with the new open world format, I do need to take a little bit of time to clarify what's being counted, since there's obviously a lot here. Easiest is obviously going to be the legacy dungeons, which are going to be treated like normal stages. Next easiest to define are the minor dungeons, which are basically all the caves and catacombs littered all around the map. I will be counting all of these. The open world segments are also reasonably simple to define. I'll largely be dictated by the on-screen prompts when you go into area transitions, although I do hold the power to override if the zone feels too minor to count as separate. These will be considering the region's overall geography, scattered ruins, minor forts, enemy camps, and forges. Finally, and most fiddly to look at, are what I'm calling major forts. Optional named mini-dungeons which are a little bit of a spectrum. There's a number of somewhat important forts which I will not be counting, and others that I will. I'm reserving the option to just adjust as places show up, but generally my requirements for something to be a major fort are that it must be large enough to have multiple graces or significant shortcuts, and it must have a boss. I think that they all kick you off your horse, but I don't want to say that it's absolutely required, since in theory you could do one with it. Basically, the idea is that Castle Morne will count, while Fort Hate will not. Bosses are a lot more simple. If it has a boss bar, it's a boss. If it doesn't, it's not. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of boss slop. I'm going to attempt to fight every single boss without Spirit Ashes. This is an ego thing. It's just that Ashes don't make the fights easier as much as they just skip the fight outright. I want to rate the fights, so I probably shouldn't be skipping them. With that said, the game is hard as hell solo, so I've failed every single time I've tried this in the past, so we'll see if I can keep that together this time. With that said, I'm not above going cheesy on the builds. I'm planning on using a very meta weapon, partially because the game is hard and I need the help, but also because I never actually used it in all my other playthroughs for one reason or another, so I really should see what all the fuss is about. I'm not going to be above using status abuse or anything like that, but I am going to fight the things head on without a clone if I can help it, and that's proper effort enough for me. Going into this, my thoughts on Elden Ring are complicated. Back when I used to write reviews, one bit of feedback I got fairly often was that I seemed more negative than I intended to be, where people would be shocked about a high score while much of the content was discussing things that I didn't think worked very well. This is simply because it's easy to say that something rules without much elaboration, while I tend to try and justify my complaints with a lot more detail. This was a writing shortfall on my part, and usually I would never notice it happening, but Elden Ring was one where I actually felt this myself. The point of this series is to limit selective weighting, and when I think about Elden Ring, I do a lot of selective weighting. I think everyone does in their own way. The game is so open and flexible that it's very easy to make the parts you don't like basically not exist, which makes it very easy to hand wave away any negative moments. I don't like massively important parts of the game, but I still ended up loving it, and that's largely because I can skip everything I don't like, so it's easy to dismiss them as not counting. If you find scouring the world and finding everything extremely boring, you can just not do that. There's clear signposting on the map for the critical path, so you can just rush the main parts. If you don't want to miss out on the 30 important pieces of loot that are in the overworld, you can just jump onto an interactive map and pick it all up in 15 minutes while avoiding all of the wasted time. You really don't have to spend more than a few minutes in the overworld at a time if you really don't want to. If you're not liking the minor dungeons, you can just skip them. If you think the game is too hard if you skip all the filler stuff and feel pressure to do it against your will, you can just duck over to the Elbenorix and farm 20 minutes there, and you'll gain all the levels you would have gotten from every bit of side content in the game. If you think a boss is obnoxious to fight, you can just whip out a summon or use a simple nuke build and basically not have to fight it at all. There's really very few complaints that can't be fairly easily hand-waved. Personally, I don't like the directionless Easter egg hunt style of open world it uses. I don't like the boss design. I think it's horrendously unrewarding with most loot. I don't like the filler spam, and I don't like how the Spirit Ashes work as an easy mode. So yeah, that's some pretty crazy major stuff to not like. I just adore the major dungeons and have a lot of fun with the gear management and build crafting, and in theory I can basically skip all those parts that I dislike, even if making them good is another question. So all in all, it ends up still being one of my favourite games, despite me disliking massive chunks of it. I'm curious to see how the format goes when every part gets equal say. I'm going to split this one into a few parts. My video editor starts getting a bit screwy around the half-hour mark, and I'm not overly keen to see what happens when I'm going past 90. I think the game is going to break my system through sheer content mass and pump out like quadruple the score as any other game in the series, although a lot of it is pretty low effort, so it may do the opposite and tank it. It'll be interesting to see what happens. My prediction is that it's going to pump out a massive score though. At any rate, there's going to be a lot of this, so let's get moving. The Stranded Graves do have a separate name from the Hero's Grave, so I guess the tutorial zone is its own zone. There's nothing special about this one. It does the DS2 skippable thing, which is nice. It effectively mentions all techniques, although I like starting Elden Ring as a deprived since the quest for pants is a fun introduction to an exploration-based game, so I actually couldn't do half of them. Still, it's functional enough. I get that the Soldier of Goldrick is a tutorial boss that's meant to be a gentle point of entry, but he's a regular easy mob from just outside but with a health bar. It is possible to be too dumbed down. It's funny, but it's bad. Limgrave is a strong start to the open world. Actually, I only just learned that Stormhill was a different location today, so I guess I can actually finish Limgrave proper before going down into the Weeping Peninsula, which will be a little bit neater than the back and forth that I usually do. Limgrave is a nice looking, melancholic but not too dour land of cliffs and grasslands. The central swamp is a good anchoring point of geography. There's a solid variety of activities between Fort Height, the various ruins, the roaming caravan, the surprise room bear, and some NPC stuff, and it has some neat overworld bosses and so on. It is absolutely assisted by being so early in the game that really all loot is good loot, something the later areas will not have the luxury of. I didn't do it this run, but the Kayla teleport is one of the best moves an open world game has ever done. Stumbling into that in my first go will always stick with me. Overall though, I'm honestly not a fan of this kind of stumble about until you find stuff open world design. Maybe I'll do a video lightly defending the Ubisoft formula one day, but I remember where basically everything is, and I am using guides for the stuff that I've forgotten, so I didn't waste too much time wandering around in fields here. The fact that it still scored this well despite me not enjoying its entire design philosophy is a good indicator of how good of an introduction it is. First off, I decided to get the Bloodhound's Fang as a starter weapon, which I proceed to not use not even once. So I took on Darrowell to make Blade happy. I don't remember if I need to bring Blade along into the fight itself, but it's such a meaningless one that I just let him tag along just in case. Yes, I know I'm trying for a no summon wrong. Starting now, pinky promise. This guy is basically one of these Ice Knights from Dark Souls 3. He has a pretty neat, fairly wild and odd to read moveset, and he staggers fairly easily to keep him from being too crazy. Obviously, I broke him with a friend, but there's more of these guys to come. I ended up finding the large club on the way out of the Everjail, so instead I've decided to use that for my early game because I'm planning to go very, very meta on this one in the hope of staying ash-free, so keeping my stats simple will be very helpful. And the club lets me level HP exclusively for a while. To actually start picking off these easy health levels, I'll need to clear some easy zones, and Limgrave doesn't get much easier than the Groveside Cave. Thankfully, caves aren't usually this low tier because this is bad. It's a crazy dark single room full of wolves which jump up the walkways and try to pincer attack you. There's some garbage items around. This place is awful. I'm kind of split on whether or not I consider the Beastman to be a good likely first boss for people. He's squishy and low damaging enough to be a suitable first fight, and his susceptibility to stagger is a good lesson to start using R2s whenever you can. But he's also like some random mob from later in the game, and has failed at being much of a wow moment for that reason. While moveset-wise, he's so wacky and delayed and bizarre that he doesn't feel very good to encounter before you've really gotten into the groove of it all yet. Limgrave is starting to make me feel less certain that Elden Ring is going to dominate through sheer numbers, because geez, these early mini-dungeons are bad. This one is about as simple as the Wolf Cave, except it's full of demi-humans, but it has the small added bonus of having a secret mini-route after the boss to take you into a little island, which is completely worthless. For a fight with 2 main bosses and 6 adds, this is actually pretty decent. You've got a chance to do some damage from stealth before things get crazy, and it'll stay in waves of 4 if you can control the fight area. The big ones don't overlap a whole lot with the mobs, and they have pretty manageable movesets for a low health, low heals gank. It's really not bad. Given there are 3 sets of catacombs in Limgrave proper, it's a relief that the first one at least is alright. They're very chalice dungeony, with the locked door near the entrance, so it's formulaic, but it's an infinitely better layout than the tunnels with a boss at the end with all the other micro dungeons. They do run these cat dudes into the ground, but they're neat at first. They're just so unlifelike. They really nail that statue to life vibe that they're going for. With that said, they are super unlifelike, so all their moves are these weird, delayed, odd movements, and it's pretty unnatural to fight with. For now, that's kind of fun. Soon, not so much. I probably should have gone to the Limgrave tunnels first, since they're such a good place to get early upgrade materials and they're visible on the map. I don't like the cave look, but the mining structures add a tiny amount of appeal, and the layout is fairly decent with all the optional paths and hidden areas, although they are straight runs to the end with no shortcuts. You've probably already seen some Stone Digger trolls wandering around on the map, which makes for a pretty lame boss because they're just an enemy. They're pretty intimidating looking, but they're really just here to bonk with charged R2s and criticals. Sadly, our second dose of catacombs is not up to the standards of the first. It's 2 rooms with ganks, and some traps in the hallways leading into them. That's all there is. It's annoying and uninteresting. I think this is the earliest I've ever fought a Grave Warden, and you know what? He actually wasn't a pushover without the statistical advantage. I don't know how to handle any of his moves, and he's fairly relentless when that actually matters. I did very little damage, and his punish windows are extremely short, so there's really not that much time for the charge attacks that I've been chasing this run without a lot more study. He is, however, very backstabbable, so I just did that like 9 times. With Murkwater Cave, we're back into single room ones. I guess this one's for merchant reasons, so there is a justification, but it's still a terrible, terrible level. There's a room with 2 guys, and 5 guys hidden in another room who will all charge in if you hit a trap. Inside that room is a chest, with mushrooms in it. It honestly makes me angry how trolly that is. Patches is a story boss, and he's not meant to fight worth a damn. And indeed, he doesn't. 100% of the appeal is him going into sniveling coward mode. And I fully get that appeal. I absolutely love that beg for mercy twist. Again, not a good fight, but I enjoyed that moment. Believe it or not, that's all the mini dungeons in Limgrave if we're separating Stormhill. It actually does make sense when you pay attention to the title card changeover, because everything up there is way harder than everything that we've done. So for now, I'm off killing roaming bosses. First up is the Mad Pumpkinhead before Selin. I like how these guys look. They're not very good fights, but the head thing I guess does make sure you're circling around. I mean, you would have been doing that anyway, but still. In theory, I like these boat dudes, but they're so off-kilter that they just stop being fun. They basically rely on summons and just kind of look cool on their own, but they hit their own summons and everything is insanely slow, so you can basically just beat the crap out of them like a piñata. I nearly one-cycled this one, which would have been neat. The Knights Cavalry definitely wear the hell out of their welcome by the end, but I think they're cool in isolation, and as it's our first one, that moment has not yet come. For whatever reason, I struggled getting into my usual guard counter rhythm on this one, and found it a little bit too keen for it to run away. But still, it's a ring wraith, it's cool. Usually these early game dragons lack character, but the Elden Ring base design is super cool. It will wear out as we'll see, but at first it's basically just a less badass meteor. I like to fight them on horseback, at least until I have more health. It's a very methodical and formulaic way to fight them, borderline boring even, but the damage on those fire moves are just way too likely to one-shot me on foot. So I kind of have to whittle them down in sleepy mode. And finally, I figured I'd give the Tree Sentinel a whirl, and honestly, even by now I think I might have left him too late. I've literally only leveled health and strength on this character, and it turns out that putting all your early levels into things that actively help you makes you crazy strong. Who knew? I like that he leaves long enough windows for heavy attacks so you can get a bunch of staggers in, and obviously he looks sick. But he's way more immediately accessible than I thought if you start with a class with 100% shield. Obviously, my damage was high, but he only hit me twice with those quick horse correction bops. At this point, I figured I'd check the wiki to see if I missed anything before hitting up the Weeping Peninsula, and it turns out my memory was pretty good because I'd only missed the High Road Cave. However, it was a bad one to miss because it's absolutely the best one that I've found so far. It starts like a regular, terrible wolf cave, but it quickly expands into a big open room with bat monsters and waterfalls and fallen ruins. It's still an Elden Ring cave, so it's still a straight run to the end, but there are some little loops in here too. The Guardian Golem probably shouldn't have been so hidden away, because it's a good lesson for very early on. Basically, he's a giant with a heap of health, and you're going to have trouble bringing him down with regular little chips. But he does stagger easily and takes massive critical damage, so he would have taught the value of stance break well. He's basically worthless outside of that lesson, and he's too far in to teach it. With that, all of Limgrave is done, and we're off to the Weeping Peninsula, which I actually did successfully fully complete from memory. This is both a good thing and a bad thing. As a positive, I don't have dementia yet. As a negative, I did end up giving this a pretty thorough scouring, and I don't really enjoy open world scouring. I wasted so much time checking featureless cliff faces and heading over into empty areas. I just don't get the appeal. As for the area itself, it's kind of more Leonia, but rainy and a little bit darker. It has a more intricate layout with several raised areas creating valleys and tucked away zones, which can get a little bit more elaborate as you skip up and down with horse jumps. The mausoleum and gravity craters offer a little sprinkle of newness, but overall it's a solid area which is rightly relegated to merely being a place to get levels for Margit. And we're immediately back to trash caves. Earthbore Cave is a crumbling floor that drops you into a room full of rats. Or, if you avoid that, it's a room full of rats and a tunnel with some rats. Both suck. There's nothing else here. It's trash. Similar to the Golem, this guy is actually a really good teacher, but the game is so hands-off that I didn't notice it until this playthrough. As with that one, stance breaks are a good thing to abuse, and the Room Bear is a good follow-up lesson. He is quite susceptible, not quite as much so, but still enough that you can easily hit 3 or 4 of them if you focus enough. He's actually dangerous, so they become more valuable to pop, and most importantly, he has some winds up that are so insanely long that you can hit him with a charge attack while he's loading it up. He's actually the best teacher for hitting scary things while they're active we've had so far, which is basically the only way to interact with the real bosses later on. After a quick diversion to kill some ghost turtles, I hit up the Impaler's Catacombs, and at least the Catacombs are back to being the usually best mini-dungeon. This one introduces a rising floor trap, and has a clever under-elevator skip down to use. It's still very Chalice dungeony, but overall, it's not a bad one. Here we have our first boss reuse. At least it took longer than Bloodborne did. Unfortunately, they decided to spice it up by putting like 6 imps in the room, so you just need to run in circles getting bled constantly, or cat slam exploded, while you try to kill all the ads, and it just sucks. I did another playthrough after this one to get some footage for a follow-up video, where I hit this up earlier and with much lower health, and the imps were utterly hellish. So I'll score the annoyance levels between those depending on whether you have 25 vigor or not. Once they're all dead, it's just a repeat boss, and I still like the kitty cat, but all my joy was taken away by the imps. The mine of this region is the very definition of serviceable. There's miners, there's elevators, there's tunnels with lots of upgrade mats, and there's bits off the sides of elevators. This one has some Mr. Begottens around to break up the miner spam. Otherwise, it's just another messy run to the boss with shortcuts disregarded in favour of just having you skip the side areas. As I said, serviceable. Oh, come on. This isn't even a reused mini-boss. It's just a reused regular enemy. I genuinely can't tell if it even has buffed health over the ones in the overworld. It's embarrassing. Well, it's been a few hours. I guess that we were due to have a poison swamp. At least it's small because it's in a cave, and at least it's Dark Souls 3 poison, so it basically does no damage. But no one likes being poisoned, and the enemies are annoying ranged spammers. It's just a lame place. The boss of the crappy poison cave is less of a reused mini-boss and more of a reused piece of level clutter. It's a plant that will poison you, but poison does nothing, and otherwise, largely, it just waits to die. At most, it's a tiny room to put the laser field move in. It's just more embarrassment, really. Our final stage for the region is our first skeleton catacombs. The skeleton gimmick in Elden Ring is super obnoxious. You need to double tap them once they're down, so obviously I made my mini club my sacred one and one-shot everything with holy damage. This nullified the annoyance, but also made the place a bit of a nothing burger. I like how it uses the flame pillar as an elevator, but really that's all there is to say about it. The Cemetery Shade may be the most RNG dependent enemy in the whole game. Basically, if it sits still for a moment like it did here, you'll just melt it because he has no health or resistance. But it can teleport around, and if you get unlucky with whiffing everything because it's warping, its bleed output can be shockingly high. In this particular case, with Sacred Blade chipping in, it was a joke, but on a bad day, he can get you. With all the mini dungeons down, I went on a killing spree of overworld bosses before Castle Morne, starting with the traditional Ring Wraith. It's pretty much the same as the Halberd one, except now he causes bleed. I still have fun with them and their derpy AI, although they do spend too much time just doing dressage miles out of range. Deathbirds do get insanely awful eventually, but our first death chicken is very easy since most of the moveset is disabled, which is nice because you can just appreciate its pecking oddness and intriguing visual design. Sacred Blade absolutely messes up, so it is kind of a non-fight, but it's a fairly fun non-fight. The simplicity of my early build continues to wreck the Peninsula. Ancient Heroes of Zamor are generally super hard as regular enemies later on, but here it just got bonked into oblivion, so I missed a lot of what it can do. So I'm not sure if this one has a toned down moveset or not. With the Erdtree avatar, the Vanguard Demon has returned again, this time trying to hide in a new outfit. It does have a slightly different moveset, which has a little bit of that Rune Bear punish before the attacked rhythm to it, which can be neat once learned. However, I have never ever learned how to dodge the Star Slam consistently, so when it uses that, I'm just kinda screwed. Finally, after all this time, we're up to our first main dungeon. It's not quite a legacy dungeon, but it's by far the most substantial thing we've done so far because Elden Ring is a cluster bomb of slop. It's a fairly neat seaside castle with a few standout areas. There's a big corpse pile with the Misbegotten ritual on top, there's battles on the ramparts, there's the drop down to the town portion and then access to the beach. The big issue here is that there has a deranged opposition to shortcuts. There are so many chances for them and they never take them. Like, it's not a hard place, so you don't need them, but they're right there. There should be a ladder to kick down near the NPC since you'll want to come back to him a couple of times. It would make the second bonfire completely unnecessary too. Likewise, I don't know why the second bonfire has a one-way drop in it. It's not really a problem, it's just a weird, obvious shortcoming. With this being the first remotely substantial and unique area, it's a bummer that the boss is just another enemy with a health bar. It's at least buffed enough to be better than the Scaly from earlier, but come on man, this place deserved better. The next open world zone is basically just a named portion of Limgrave. It looks the same, it has the same design ideas, and it has the same enemies. It's just the beefier, stronger, raised area near the Legacy Dungeon. I do really love how there's a route that you can take to just skip it and go straight to the second region, but otherwise, there's some diminishing returns here. My first stop here was the Everjal Crucible Knight, and he still completely kicked my ass because he's overtuned as hell and has no recovery time. So, instead, frustrated, I tried the Bell-Bearing Hunter, and thankfully he was more manageable. He still has a lot of delay attacks, tight windows, and unreliable pauses, but at least he doesn't have a shield, so if you screw up, it'll at least be a trade, and I find it a lot easier to get hits in while he's missing. I like his moveset with a cool magic sword, and he stags in 3 charged R2s, so it's pretty fun trying to find the windows to pop those when you can. It's a good fight, even though I'm definitely bad at it. While I continue my hunt to find one more smithing stone too, I stumbled into the Death-Touched Catacombs, which is another skeleton one. This is basically just a few rooms full of bony boys and there's nothing else to it. One of them has 2 access points, I guess. Sacred Blade again minced it, but at least I don't need to double tap the floor. The Black Knife Assassin boss throws a wrench into my Stormhill is quietly the third area of the game theory, because this guy is basically as squishy as the Cemetery Shade, but has less damage output. When I saw how much damage I was doing, I got real sloppy and just tried to R1 pin it in the corner, so I didn't really engage with it very much, because it's a joke. The Deathbird up here isn't really any harder than the first one either. I noticed it jumping around a lot more and attacking around shields a bunch, but I think it's just a straight copy and I got unlucky. From memory, they get hard as hell after this one, so I'm going to take my incredibly sloppy, easy win while I can take it. With that done, there's nothing left in this whole region bar the Crucible Knight, and he's still causing me enough headaches that I'm just going to come back when I change weapons. So I guess I'm into Stormveil, which means going through Margit. Given I've done basically everything before him and have leveled extremely efficiently, he was a bit of a cakewalk. But Margit is a good example of my issues that I have with the harder fights in Elden Ring. He's built to be fun once you know him, with no consideration for the learning experience. He has insane delays, super long combos with varying tempos, heal punish knives, quick attacks that cancel punish windows, and he jumps around a whole lot. He'll combo endlessly if you stay in the wrong spots or panic. It's just not a fight that you can interact with blind instinct. My statistical superiority meant I got away with a lot more fuzzy memory than I would have normally, but I remembered enough to have some fun. Not as much as the clean kill I would have gotten if I had a few more retries, but more fun than the absolutely painful pure learning process that I had in prior runs. His delays are so long that you can do charge heavies while he's screwing around, which is actually kind of cool, and dodging everything does feel good because you have to specifically understand each swing as each weapon comes out at different speeds. Obviously I was like 40% on my memory, but this was my only attempt, so I didn't really get the chance to re-internalize all the specific dodges. And now finally, after all this time, we are at our first Legacy Dungeon. And no matter what I say about the overworld, It absolutely did not harm their primary level quality at all. This place is fantastic. It's got several unique zones, lots of elevators to give hub zones a lot of looping good times. There's so much choice in how to approach it too. Right from the start, you can mad charge a pathway of explosive arches and skip like half the level, or you can sneak in around the back. There's optional routes through the roof and down beneath the bowels of the place. There's so much here, and it's all great. My only real issue is the grace spam. This place has like 6 graces in it, and they do negatively impact the sensation of linking up the whole map. Some are just kind of useless, like the first one around the back, or the one next to the gate mechanism, since they're both like 10 seconds and 2 enemies away from the entry grace. But there are some which actively harm how useful loops are. The one next to the boss door stands out as the clearest example. There's a shortcut just around the corner which takes you back to the prior hub grace, but since there's one at the door, that whole loop is completely pointless. The crazy thing is, they invented the solution to this in this game. Just replace the last one with a Stake of America. That way, the shortcut has value, since you need it to go dump souls and change gear, but the runback is removed if you're dying. They do this a whole heap in Elden Ring, and I cannot understand why. So I kind of ruined Godric with stats again. I played this guy like garbage and just kind of snuck through while not dodging a damn thing. I'm a bit bummed because he's probably my favourite boss in the game when I actually avoid anything at all. I'd have had a better time if I had to give him a second go. Obviously, my high stats covered the performance, but I always have found him much easier than Margit, so I do think they shortchanged him by 10 to 20% in all departments. He's very delayed, so there are a lot of timings to learn, but he's not overly deceptive or tricky, he's just slow. Everything he does looks like you'd expect, and nothing comes out of nowhere. He's very fun when you don't have enough health and damage to just eat literally 3 grabs and 4 fire attacks and about 60% of his melee attacks. I'm going to start vanity leveling soon, so this should be the last time I nullify anything important with pure numbers. With that down, I used all my new stones to get a new weapon because I'm bored of my club. I chose the anchor because it fit my all strength and health leveling model, has noticeably more damage than my club, and most importantly is very funny looking. So now I just had to go test it out on something. Maybe something I left behind. The Evergaol Crucible Knight is some cheap bullcrap. I don't have much trouble with any of the others, aside from one obvious exception much later, but this one always completely messes me up. Across the board, he's designed to be as unfun and as gotcha driven as humanly possible. Almost everything he does is a lazy trick and I hate him. From neutral, he's a very passive turtle, so there's no berserker aggression to utilise to gain behind the shield position, and he functionally input reads. I know it's technically not because he's reacting to the very first frame of animation in a completely inhuman way, but that's methodology semantics. It's fundamentally input reading. Basically, he'll sit there for like 3 to 6 seconds doing nothing, and the frame you do anything to try and push things forward, he'll just pop out some nonsense and hit you. Once things are going, he's got a mix of varying combo lengths with fake-out pseudo-neutral pauses between the continuations, incredibly tight windows, several delay attacks, often with similar tells. His sword drag attack looks very similar to his regular combo until he grounds his sword. He's just a little bit more upright. But if you wait long enough to see the sparks, you'll have been hit by the regular one. Both the 1-2 swing and the foot stunt can be chained into bigger combos, which is fine. It's something to watch for, but he'll stop and stand perfectly still for an eighth of a second to bait you into thinking that it's the non-combo version, and it's just cheap. If you wait for a quarter of a second to confirm fully before acting, he'll recover fast enough to catch you with his next combo, which is again triggered faster than he usually would do because input reading. So whenever you stand back and watch, things will look like windows until you actually try to do something. In Phase 2, he gains a quick tailspin extension, which he will delay for ages just to input read you. I mean, look at this one. He stands around all neutral just to appear like he wasn't extending this time for well over a second, and then pops at the instant that I hit the button. It's cheap. There's almost nothing he does where I couldn't highlight some little quirk that they put in just to make him hard at the cost of anything resembling fun. He's just a fiddly nightmare to not trade with. I don't even mind the input read arena chase heal punish. That's manageable and actually inspires more exciting play, but everything else is miserable. Honestly, all his crap is so specific that even when learned, he doesn't become a fun dance of tightly rehearsed knowledge. It's just mechanical BS management. Yes, I spent more time talking about this regular enemy mini-boss than I have about any other fight all series. he's not remotely fun, and I hate him. As I was about to head off into Liurnia, it dawned on me that I'd plumb forgotten a place right back at the very start of the game. The Fringe Folk Hero's Grave is a fairly novel, puzzle-led area placed in the same building as the tutorial, and I like it quite a bit with the caveat that I know what I'm doing. I know where to drop down for the section that lets you kill the chariot. I know not to bother fighting the second grafted Scion. I know when I should fight the ghosts and when I should ignore them, and I know my routes. With all that, it's quite fun getting around all these back routes and dealing with the chariot. Without that knowledge, it's a one-shotting misery hellfest. We did already fight an ulcerated tree spirit back in the Stormveil, but this is the first one to get the health bar. I know these guys can be quite messy, but this went smoothly, so I had a lot of fun. They're cool-looking tree snake monsters with holy damage and lots of crazy moves. It didn't really do anything that overwhelmed me, and I beat the living crap out of it. So I had fun this time, but I know it can be a bit of a crapshoot with the flailing. Good God. Half an hour in, and we've just finished Limgrave. It's definitely a solid intro to the game, but it is absolutely boosted by that intro status. It's a lot denser with crap than the rest of the game, but at least that crap is useful to handle all the early levels and upgrades. This will become less of a powerful factor as the game goes on, as less things become relevant to any build. I was pretty concerned early on that the absolute garbage of some of the early mini-dungeons might bring this down to an overall negative figure, but it really does only take one remotely fresh gimmick for any of them to obtain basic neutrality, so I think the rest of the game will keep pumping out silly numbers since they're always a little bit longer later on. With that said, that means there are less of them to find, so the overall sections themselves are going to feel a lot more barren and meaningless to explore. Obviously, the main dungeon portion of it is utterly incredible, and my system is pretty unfair giving it as much weight as like Patch's Cave, but it is what it is. If they didn't want a crappy YouTube video to overstate the impact of slop, they shouldn't have made slop such a big portion of the game. I'm actually going to put a pin in it here, partially to protect my screaming CPU, but also because I'm not exactly sure how the rest of this is going to work. Limgrave is the only map portion that's reasonably doable in one big chunk. Every other zone has a sub-area which is returned to later, so there's a lot of back and forth from here on out. Liurnia has the Moonlight Altar, which is locked behind completing a heap of underground areas, and is more difficult than that. Caelid has the Dragon Barrow zone, which is much harder than the regular section. The underground has Moog, who is generally one of the last 5 bosses that anyone hits up. Altars has the Shunning Grounds. The Volcano Manor shouldn't really be done until you reach the mountaintops. And, oh yeah, the absolute end of the game is in it. Even the Snowy Zone, which is theoretically a single shot to the end, makes sense to be interrupted by all those side areas once you've made all your upgrades there. So with that problem, it may end up being a really long time before I actually finish another zone fully for another neat part-splitting endpoint if I keep going in true playthrough order. I may end up doing some time traveling and editing to bring things forward to keep things neater, but then it'll break the Let's Play narrative of the experience that I've lent on with these things. Or maybe I'll do a little bit of both, since it's kind of silly leaving Liurnia hanging there for 2 bosses and an overworld segment with nothing in it, while leaving Altus's final scorecard to the end is kind of the only way to do it. I don't know, feel free to comment if you prefer the ordered retelling, or if you'd like me to keep things batched up more neatly. At any rate, this one's done. The playthrough itself is actually completely done already, so it's just a matter of me doing a bunch of video editing and recording, so it shouldn't be too long before part 2, whatever the hell that entails.